my science notebook for this year. Get super into it and they're like, let me see your pinky. Game changer. They will do anything for a monkey banana sticker, okay? Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about science notebooking. On Instagram, on lindsay.learns, which is my Instagram account, I had a lot of questions on how I set up my science notebooks and some of the changes that I've made over the years. And so I thought I'd come on here and just get a little more in depth about how I do science notebooking and what has changed. So these are my science notebooks. I have been doing science notebooks 4 out of the 6 years that I've been teaching science. I thought I'd go and show you the inside of my science notebook, how I set things up, and some of the things I do to make setup a little more simple. So let's go into my science notebook for this year. All right, my science notebook for this year, first of all, it's a decomposition book, and they can be pretty expensive, but I really like that it says it's 100% post-consumer waste recycled pages. That makes me feel good about it. I try not to buy these unless I can score them at like TJ Maxx. At TJ Maxx, they're $3.50, $3.99 versus like $7.99 if you go to Target. So anyway, but that's just my personal preference. You can get whatever composition notebook that you want. I suggest doing composition notebooks because the spirals, at least in middle school, never hold up all year. I get the spirals like loosening and widening, and then all of a sudden half of the spirals out of the page just because we use them so much. So it's my preference that we have composition notebooks. Also, I have found that if students have the spirally notebooks, it's much more likely that they will tear out a page so that they have paper for their other classes. So in the past, I had students with like 100-page notebook, and then all of a sudden they were down to 70 and they didn't have any more room left because we usually get to around page 100 to 120 in any given science notebook throughout the year. So that's just a little tip. I suggest this for the students, a composition book, any kind, but if they bring a spiral because that's the only thing that they bought and they were actually prepared for school on the first day of school, then I don't sweat it. I just tell them, as long as it's just for my class, I'm good with it. Because, as many of you know, science does not have a science textbook. We have gone to the NGSS standards, which is all new, and the NGSS standards are great, but we just don't have a textbook for it yet. And so what I tell my administration and my students is that this becomes our textbook. Anytime you need to review any parts of science that we've learned about, it's all going to be right here. So it's really super helpful. Okay, so the first thing, I usually have the first page, they just write their name super big on the first page. They also write my name and the date, so this is the 2018-19 school year, and then the period. And I have them write my name and the period because if they happen to leave it out at lunchtime or they just leave it behind in another class, they can look and see who it belongs to and what class they have science, and then it just gets delivered straight to me and I can give it to the student. So it just makes it a little bit easier. What I've done in the past that I forgot to do this year is to put also my room number on it so that it just is an extra step that another teacher or student doesn't have to look up in case they don't know who I am. Okay, so that was the first page. The second page is my actual page 1. Let me back it up a little bit for you. And this is the table of contents page. This outline is from Science Teaching Junkie. So if you look up Science Teaching Junkie, it's on her blog for free. She also has an awesome Teachers Pay Teachers store that I have bought one too many things from, but she's a really great creator and actually my first science inspiration when I started on this science journey. I went to her blog all the time for tips and tricks and how to do things and procedures, and so she's amazing. So her table of contents page, it says interactive science notebook at the top, and then it says right here, left side, practice, review, diagrams, or reflection. So if you do science notebooking, you can either do it where you have whatever you want on every page, or the left side and the right side are for specific things. So right side is classroom activities, notes, labs, basically anything that the teacher gives out. That's what goes on the right side of the notebook, or all of the odd number pages. On the left side of the notebook goes all of the teacher or the student input. So things like they take what the teacher gave them, their notes, their lectures, and then on the left side is where they actually do their own critical thinking about it. Maybe they make a map, like a thinking map, a bubble map, a Venn diagram comparing some of the things that they've learned. So the left side is pretty much their side. Now, when you first begin, I guide them and what could be on the left-hand side, because this is such a new concept, the right side, left side, teacher input, student input, that they usually need a little guidance at first as to what to put on the left side in order to think about their own thinking. I mean, that's like very higher order kind of thinking about your own thinking. So I definitely guide them, but by the end of the year, some of the students can kind of do their own output and think about their own thinking in their own way, whatever works for them. Some students are super artistic and like to draw out what they saw. Some students are more analytical and want like that numbered outline, you know, where they have the Roman numerals. So it just depends, and that's what I love about science notebooks, is that it's really personalized to the students and how they learn best. So anyway, the first page is the table of contents, and that's always page number 1. And so when I first get going with science notebooking, I have them take it out and I give them that page. Now that page, in order to fit in a lot of composition books, they actually have to cut around the edges. So I do my whole procedures right before on that day that we're setting up our science notebooks. So I go through the procedure of where the scissors are, how we use the scissors. In my class, I have adult scissors, but I also have a bunch of little like kid baby scissors that I tell them I would have to give them if they can't be responsible enough for the big scissors, which they think is hilarious because they really are like the little baby scissors. So I go over all of the scissors procedures. I have big trash cans. If you do notebooking and you're cutting and pasting, having like a nice size trash can that goes in the middle of the tables is a lifesaver. I did not have that my first year teaching, and there were little pieces of paper everywhere. I can only imagine what the custodian thought of me. It was not good. So make sure you get a little trash can, and not the ones that have like the little holes through them, because the little itty bitty pieces of paper just go through that and it's a huge gigantic mess. You need one that is just like seamless and has no holes in it. It's completely just solid. That's the word, solid. So you need a scissor, you need pairs of scissors, you need the trash can. I usually say, okay, the person with the longest hair is the one that's gonna get the materials today, or the person with the longest pinky, or the person with the longest eyelashes. And that either makes them like super awkward and they're like, okay, I'll just go get it. Or they get super into it and they're like, let me see your pinky. It's fun. So they go get their supplies, they bring them back. I show them exactly how to cut out each element that's going in. I show them that they can crumple up their trash and put it in the trash can. I mean, the first 10 times that you do science notebooking, you are just modeling and retelling, and you can't think that you say it one time and they're just gonna know what to do, because every single teacher that they have has a different procedure. So your procedure might be very different than the procedure of their history teacher or their math teacher that does interactive notebooks. So you just got to keep that in the back of your mind. I found myself the first few years getting really frustrated because the students just were not remembering my procedures, and then I remembered, oh yeah, it's because they have teachers that do everything differently. For example, at our school, the social studies department also does interactive notebooking, only they only use one side of their notebook, period. Like the whole left-hand side has nothing on it. So when I had my kids numbering their pages, I had kids skipping entire pages because that's what they already did in social studies and they had them before me. So just be very specific. So you open it up, you have your first page with all of their information on it. You have their second page that has their table of contents on it. Some people don't do table of contents at all. I love it because it keeps me organized. I make sure the day before we have our lesson, I go into the table of contents, I write down exactly what we're going to be doing that day, the titles, and then I just have this under the Elmo or document camera at my school, and as the students are walking in, they know, take out my science notebook, take out something to write with, update the table of contents, and that counts as their warm-up. Now I know that's a lot to do if you have other kinds of science warm-ups, but that counts as my warm-up because I want to teach them how to stay organized. So then this is page number 1, and then after that I have a little competition. I say, okay, whoever can reach page 100, like number their pages to 100, I give them a little prize or a raffle ticket or a sticker. Middle schoolers love stickers. That's just, you know, just so you know. Middle schoolers love stickers. You can find like the cutest little stickers or scratch and sniff. They go crazy. I had these little monkey and scratch and sniff and it smelled like bananas. Game changer. They will do anything for a monkey banana sticker, okay? That's just pro tip for you. So we have a little race. They number every page starting with their table of contents as page 1, then they flip it. The next page is then page 2, page 3, and then they just keep going. I would like them to number the entire thing, but if we don't have time for that, then that's what we do. Also on the first day, and this is something new to us this year, is I have them go, this is their front of their notebook, I have them go to the back of the notebook and open it up. So this is their back cover, and then flip one more time. And then here I have them put the NGSS cross-cutting concepts. And this page is actually, these are actually posters created by Julie at NGSS Nerd. You can find her on TPT2 and on Instagram. She's amazing. I've talked to her a lot just about different teaching stuff. So she's so great. And she made these amazing cross-cutting concept posters. And what I did is I just screenshotted each poster and I put it in PowerPoint so that all of the posters took up the 8.5 by 11 page, and printed it out in color. And then when I went to my printer, I scaled it down to 80% and had the kids cut around the excess paper, and it fits perfectly into their composition notebook. And cross-cutting concepts, and then if you turn one more page, here are their science engineering practices, also made by Julie in that same, she has you can either buy the cross-cutting concept posters or the science engineering practice posters, or you can buy both for a little bit of a discount. So of course this girl bought both. And so science engineering practices are in the very back. so that we can quickly reference these throughout the year. And if you notice on the left-hand side, I haven't put anything on the left-hand side yet, because as we go through different units and try some of these cross-cutting concepts and science engineering practices out, they'll be able to come back and write down either what they did with them or how they used them, or maybe just little notes. I haven't decided what we're gonna put over here yet, but when I figure it out, I'll let you know. But at least for now, they have the reference point. Which brings me to the second thing that is kind of a sticking point with teachers. My first 4 years of using science notebooks, or 3 years, I was using glue sticks. And it worked okay. But glue sticks drive me a little crazy, because if you don't squeeze that cap on all the way, it'll just dry out, and then you've wasted however much money, because I would get those jumbo glue sticks because the little ones just would run out too fast. Last year, we decided to go with tape, and that has been a complete game changer. I love it. I cannot tell you how much I love using tape in science notebooks versus glue, because there's no dry time, there's no sticky residue on people's fingers or on the table, but it does require a whole lot of management. I mean, before we even pass out the tapes, we have a serious conversation about how to use it, how much to use. I tell them, your pinky finger, if you're using a longer piece than this, too much tape. Too much tape. And I make sure to tell them we don't like roll our tape and then stick things down. We just tape things in. Hopefully you can see it. We tape things in right at the top so that we can also flip the papers up if we ever wanted to write something underneath. And there have been so many times where we have put something in our science notebook, we taped it, and then we write different notes underneath too. So that has really been a game changer for me personally. The last thing we do on our notebook setup day is I will pass out a little sticker, like a little label. It could be any size label that they want or that you can find. And when they stick the label, they stick it on the front of their science notebook, and they put their first name, their last name, and the period number. And they even write science notebook, because like I said, some of our teachers do notebooking in other contents, so they can easily see it. This also helps me when grading. My very first year teaching, I did not do the label trick. And what I found was that having to open up every single science notebook to that first page, especially when I was checking probably the middle or the end, closer to the end of the year, was just, sounds crazy, but it was too time consuming. I wanted to be able to look right here, see the name, find the name on my grading sheet, turn to whatever page they had that I had to grade, and that be that. So having to open up, look at the front cover or the front page, that was just too much. So I would highly suggest investing in labels that they can just put on the front of their science notebook to make your life so much easier. The next thing that we're gonna do that is gonna be new this year is I'm going to print out tabs so that every single unit, every unit has a little tab, so they can just quickly reference, they can flip to that tab and they can go exactly to the unit that we were studying either in the past or currently or whatever it may be. So when I start to make those, I'll give you guys a little update, but I did notebooking in Avid and I did tabs for them, and it was a life changer. I loved it. So as soon as I get the tabs all made, I will show you guys that. I'm sure there's many YouTube videos on how to make your own tabs and put them in science notebooks, but if not, then I'll show you guys that too. So I think that's it. For day one, it's a lot of teaching procedures, teaching students how to use scissors and tape and the trash bins, making sure that I end early enough so that all of the materials can go back to their homes. It takes probably 6 or 7 minutes the first few times of me saying, okay, one person, take your personal trash bin and go to the trash can and dump it in there and then put it over to the side counter. Okay, one person, go take all of the pairs of scissors and go put it back on the side counter. All right, one person, take your tape, put it back on the side counter. Or have the same person do it, but then it just takes longer to get everything done. So you just have to do what works for you, and just make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time to get all of that cleanup done. It's also important on the first days that you're telling kids to pick up anything on the floor around them and throw it away, so that they know if they make a mess, they're gonna be the ones cleaning it up. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I think I might make this a series because there's a few things. Oh, one of the things that I did, nope, not that year. Last tip. One of the things that I did one year was I invested in these envelopes right here. These envelopes, I had them paste to the very back page. You could also have them pasted on the back cover, but this one was a little slick, so it wouldn't work as well. And that way, if you are doing any cutting and gluing of anything and kids don't have time to cut and paste and all the things, they can just put anything that they don't finish in this little envelope and then close the flap and then close the cover, and then they're good to go. So that's not something I did this year. I found I wasn't using the flap as much because I really cut down on the activities that you had to cut out a lot of paper. It was just taking too much time. But if you teach like 7th grade and you're doing a lot with like cells and organelles, there's a lot of great interactive notebook pages for that. And you might want to think about investing in something like this. In 7th grade, when I taught 7th grade science and cells and photosynthesis, this was really helpful because there's so many good resources with notebook pages. There are a lot of things to cut out, but in the end, like, the kids really were hands-on with it and knew the parts a lot better than the kids that really weren't trying with their science notebook. So that's my last tip for you. Now, I think I'm gonna make this into a notebooking series and show you exactly what my science notebook looked like my first year teaching versus what it looks like now, and how I've reorganized things and tried to make things a little bit more accessible for my students. So I hope this was super helpful. If you have any questions about science notebooking, or you liked what you saw, give me a like or a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.